Okay, so we are back, and instead of redoing this segment, I'm just going to refer to what we were talking about. I had to take a phone call. My wife's teaching some classes clear out in New Hampshire on the other end of the country from here, and I, unfortunately for all of you people, or maybe fortunately, consider her to be a lot more important than you are. So I said, we pause this video. But what we were talking about was the fact that the bullets that I originally set up for my original finding out if Varget was going to work a couple of days ago were some Ubers that I had carefully measured up, made sure that all the clearances were good, was aware of the pressure ring, was aware of it from before because I've been shooting this lot of Ubers for a while now. When I'm out of them, I'm out of them, but they shoot really well. They're kind of a baseline for me when it comes to heavy bullets. Ellie did a good thing there when he made that die, had that die made back in the day. So, I'm a simple guy. I baseline things. I have to have things against which to compare other things. That's just the way my world works. So, while I was on the phone, I did a couple of things. I went and got my notes from out in the other room so that I didn't forget my velocity readings. But what we're doing here is we're going through and reconstructing why did I have a pressure event? Why in the world was I stupid enough? And I'm going to just say it again. It wasn't stupid, it was calculated risks, and then I made a mistake, which, while not catastrophic, cost me 20 minutes of my life while I relieved the pressure on it. And I popped that barrel off, got the case. The case did fall out. It was just pressured up longitudinally, and the case head had swelled up. So I knew what the deal was, but I don't like to risk gulling my bolt lugs on a $2,000 action. So, all that aside, I greased the lugs, but I didn't know that if they had been greased, and when they get slammed that hard, it pushes the grease out pretty good too. So, long story short, I wanted to relieve that. So now I'm in here reconstructing the event so that we can make a positive learning experience out of this instead of just, oh, I popped a primer, what are we gonna do? You know, I've popped a lot of primers, I've wrecked a lot of jewels. One of the reasons I've been testing other triggers is because I do a lot of wildcatting, and the way you do wildcatting in my world, first of all, let's go back to the fact that just like high-performance engines, the engines only run right at the top of their capacity rating. If you're stuck with small blocks, you do what you can to bring a small block up to where it's just on the edge of blowing itself up. And the racing world is full of, I got to the track, I made 2 passes, and parts went everywhere. And I love that. That's where it's, because that's not only are you pushing to capacity. Well, there's 2 things. A lot of people say, well, you're just running the ragged edge for the sake of running the ragged edge. But in fact, when it comes to accuracy, that's not true. Most guns shoot the best, ag the best. Now, when it comes to hunting guns, this doesn't apply. But when it comes to true high-end accuracy, when you're talking 10th inch, 10th minute accuracy, it absolutely does apply. You've got to get that powder up and cooking. So I figured my whole focus here was to take the 6PPC. First I made a fireform barrel, and then to make that fireform barrel useful, I decided, hey, why don't I answer a question for myself, and some viewers had asked about it regarding what can the PPC do with big bullets. So we've answered those questions. Where we had left off here was that the bullets that I had measured up had a pressure ring, and I knew that the tolerance with that pressure ring was really close. But when I ran these down into the neck, these being the Ubers, they went in okay, they went into the gun smoothly, it was all good. And they fired, and they gave me accurate pressure readings. 30 grains was 2707. I just noted these down from some of my others, and I brought this. I only got 2 shots on that last sequence. You were there. I'm going to run this camera in a little closer because I keep coming up into the foreground. And I'm going to run this up until this is legible. There we go. So I'm going to spend a little more time up closer into the foreground here, just for that reason, because I want to lean, because never stand when you can lean. So here we are. we've just finished this diagram showing that the bullet that I set up, which was a Uber 108, if you can't read upside down, screw you, go back to school. And it was, I started at 24 grains, I went to 26 grains, I went to 28 grains, I ended up at 30 grains. The Uber just went click, 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 right up to where, and it didn't ever show pressure signs. But I value my Ubers. I don't have very many, but I had a few that had been, I didn't trust them for match work. So I decided, well, I'll use these as my baseline, back to my whole baseline concept. I'm really, really big on baselines. There, one more time. Just getting this where I want. So I decided, well, I'm out of Ubers. I'm going to switch over to these 105s. And I knew that they didn't have a pressure ring. To reiterate, I knew from experience that these didn't. So the Uber is a 242 bullet, and the pressure ring is like 2422. And the pressure ring is about 2426, as well as I can measure. It's within 2 or 3 tenths of that. Just understand, my measurements are crude, rude, and unusual, and I don't trust them. But I had plenty of clearance with the Uber. So I took this known from prior testing bullet, which is essentially pressure ringless. I think I can show you what I'm talking about. Here's a quick dirty test for a pressure ring, is to grab a bullet like this and even a cheesy caliper and find out if you can make it fall. What that means is pressure ring, artifact, Uber, burger, I could pick it up. Okay, so there I've established my rationale to show that I'm not insane or stupid or just arbitrarily going up. Here's what I didn't do. I didn't go through and measure those. After I ran high pressures, and after I sat out there in stunned astonishment going, oh wow, crap, they must have a pressure ring after, I must have lodged a pressure ring into that, I came in and I stopped and I regrouped and I started measuring, and come to find out those beautiful burger bullets don't have a pressure ring. Instead, they are all 2, 4, 2, 6-ish. The entire bullet. So the entire bullet is the diameter of the pressure ring on that. Now all of a sudden, we're going to have to talk about how proper fire forming works, how cases are formed. And I'm going to draw some more pictures. We're going to set this aside in the foreground so that you can still see it. A cartridge case, I'm going to do my best here. Has got a very thick web portion with the primer pocket back here, and the brass gets progressively thinner, thinner, and thinnest. Now when we turn this, I did a few things. Number one, I blew out cases from 220 Russian up to 6 PPC, which means that just the act of blowing that case out lengthened it just a little bit, because this blasted forward and blasted outward, and it also took a little bit of this thicker brass here and rolled it into the neck, rolling this thicker shoulder brass into the neck. So when I sized these to go turn them on the mandrel, they went onto the mandrel and they looked like this. And I'm going to have to draw some What happened was that the mandrel inside of here did an imperfect job of taking that shoulder brass that had been not flowed. Forget about everything you hear. First of all, I'm going to call another BS rant, because when you go on and people talk about formation of donuts and case growth, they keep talking about things like brass flow and the contention. I would say 85–90% of all the shooters in the world believe that under pressure, brass flows and is squeezed around like modeling clay under a roller. So pressure, squeeze. BS. Absolute, total, 100% crap. Instead, brass is moved around by very obvious mechanical actions. The obvious mechanical action here starts with the fact that you take a 220 Russian case, blow it up to 6 mm, thereby rolling some thicker brass into the shoulder. Then we run it onto a mandrel and we try to push that brass out. And to an imperfect extent, we do get it pushed out. Every one of my cases, and I thought about, again, I just set up another camera that has a zoom on it so that I can get some close-ups. And I actually have lensing. I could go through all of this. I could get you close-ups that fill the entire screen and show all of this. But I'm lazy. I'm in a hurry. I've got a whole bunch of tests running. This whole YouTube thing is new to me. Don't know where we're going with it. Dinking around. Bottom line is, you're getting shortchanged on that regard. So, the mandrel inside, I made a mandrel with a little taper. Mandrel is a nice tight fit here. This is so that the cases go on, and when you slide onto the mandrel, it imperfectly irons this out, pushes the bump to the outside. It also leaves a little wrinkle artifact in here and all of these things. That's why a lot of really high-end shooters, and myself, not a high-end shooter, it will back them. The best thing you can do is just stay away from the donut. Seat your bullets out here and never worry about the donut. Well, here I have a case where I wanted to take a bone stock, my 6PPC reamer, which has, I don't even remember the free bore. It's somewhere between 0 and 30 thousandths. It has a very, very short free bore anyway. I think I may have sized this as last reamer to a series of bullets that I think I'm going to be shooting for a long time. Most of my reamers I order with no free bore, and then I cut in free bore later. I cut in, I set the lead, I set the lands where I want them. I cheated a little bit on this reamer, so it has a little bit of parallel section in it. The bullet can be seated out just a wee bit. But all of that aside, if I were shooting a bench rest bullet, which is what the gun's designed for and what it'll be used from here on out, they will never get back to the donut. All of the, I shoot 64 to 70 grain bench rest bullets, and I doubt this chamber will ever see anything else but. But in the interest of science and to satisfy a question from a dude that asked on the inner tube, and to satisfy my own curiosity, I went ahead and threw some big old, and they hang down to the powder chamber so that the bullet, it's funny, I can use this for two things. There, that boat tail just turned into a bullet. That's about how those things laid in there. 30 grains of powder came up to here. Then you jam this huge bullet in, and it was compressed in there like a monkey, but it still went out. 30 grains, push those Ubers out at 2,700 feet per second, smooth as silk. So I switched over to these other bullets, these burgers. The entire bullet is slightly fatter than the pressure ring on this guy. The entire bullet, as near as I can tell, is about 1/10 of an inch fatter than that pressure ring. Now, when I make this case, this gets pushed out. We're back to where this is being the mandrel again. We slide the case on there, it pushes this little bump out, and then when I cut a feather into the shoulder. This is cut, this is the neck, and it is cut dead parallel. And this is the original blown out shoulder angle. And you'll notice that on my cases, you can see that feathered area, which is right here. I set this cutter angle just less than, my cutter angle was about like this as I came into here turning, and it shaves in a little bit and it removes just a little bit of that fatness. We've still got a lot of brass inside of here. So I cut into that shoulder just a fuzz. But because of all the work that's been done right here, it still leaves, until this case is truly hammered out, it still leaves the tiny, it's not a donut anymore. It's just that the interior of the case comes down, it's got a little something here, and then it comes up. The exterior of the case has got the nice skinny parallel. It comes in, comes out, and then it continues up. But in this area, due to the ups and the downs, there is a tiny constriction. It's small enough that when you run the mandrel through and pull it back out, it just bounces. Now it will hammer out. This brass actually goes out and hammers and fills this gap. It all moves up into there, but it takes 2 or 3 firings for this to completely disappear. After 2 or 3 firings, there will be no donut in this. And unlike most that you've ever heard about, and I'll continue over on this side just in the interest of clarity so that you know what I'm drawing here. There's the entire cartridge case. There's no bullet in there or anything. This is actually the thickness of the neck right here. But this little artifact, this area right in here, takes a while to hammer out and completely fill this, and at that point this corner rounds out and the donut is gone and it will never reform because of the way my dies are fitted. But what happened is, I was obsessing about being safe with the pressure ring. It was never about pressure ring. I put a big old fatty bullet in here and it tightened up. And here's the other thing. You watched me. I have video of me seating these. I seated these down. These are all, I didn't fire the other ones. I only fired those 2. You can actually visually see, or at least I can, that they are of different lengths. Maybe that will give you, yeah, they are different lengths. And so, because of the fact that they are different lengths, that's a cheating that goes way beyond the pale. They're all 3 different lengths. But I was just testing. I'm just going, they don't have a pressure ring, so it doesn't matter where they sit. If they hit the lands, I'll... Well, here's the problem. When I thought I was hitting the land, when I thought I was hitting a long bullet, I was in fact getting a bind up back in here. It wasn't the lead angle impinging on the bullet and trying to push it back in. That pressure I felt right at the end was actually a constriction because of this artifact that was left in here. And I went ahead, so what I did was I ran these bullets in until they started to hit, and I stopped them by feel. You watched me stop them by feel. You watched me seat them. I seated them with a big old gap. I was using an arbor press. I ran them down. That one feels like it's hitting the little pressure ring here. What I actually had done was wedged this into that pressure ring so that it could not release. And the fact that the entire bullet was fatter exacerbated the problem, because the other thing unbeknownst to you was I went out and took the time to set up a mic on the neck thickness. The neck that pressured out, which pressured out big time now, guys. There it is right there. That primer just falls in and out. It did in fact pressure up big time. Now, the other one was still pressured up and it still ran hot. It still had some constriction in here. But this, I'll bet you this, oh yeah, there, I was able to pop that primer out. This case is also ruined. It is destroyed. I can't get, yeah, okay, I got that primer back in. Look at that. So, in one shot, there was a day when I would take this case and salvage it for a varminting case. I can get one more firing out of it without leaking the primer. Bunch of different ways to do it. Stick some aluminum foil. That, by the way, is an accuracy trick from way back. There are people that reload every round with aluminum foil in there, feeling that it produces a burn characteristic that's admirable. Now I don't have to go to any of that because I have another way of getting my extreme spread down in the dirt where I want it. But basically putting aluminum foil in there will make your primer burn a little hotter, send some molten droplets in and makes it act like it burns a little hotter. But that's a cheat that you didn't hear about from me. This case that's been hammered, you can see every artifact of the chamber on it. Again, as I said, I cut my right there, see that? You can actually see that the front of the chamber's got, well, there's nothing that you can see. It'll disappear very shortly, but this shows the entire finish of the chamber. Basically, that last little bit is where I was cutting only with the reamer because I stopped the drill bit quite a ways back or something in that area. There's nothing there that will show up any other time other than the fact that I pressure, and it may be even from something else, but I'm saying that that piece of brass and that piece of brass, both of them have been hammered beyond recognition. They go in the circular file. I don't know if you could hear any of that, but they're gone. Those are toast. These ones are getting pulled. Boop! They won't be fired with these bullets for sure. Remember, those of you who are paying attention, when I made these cases, I made some with 2/1000ths of clearance and some with 3/1000ths of clearance. So now, if I decide to continue my heavy bolted experimentation, if I see any gain in it, I'll be careful to either go turn some thin ones or just take those ones that have 3/1000ths of clearance. But in the meantime, I've got a big test going with shooting side by side with 2/1000ths of clearance and bench rest bullets, 3/1000ths of clearance and bench rest bullets, to find out if I can see any difference. In the meantime, on my match stuff, I will just take the advice of people who are much better shooters than me and say, turn thin to win. And I will continue to shoot skinnier, more clearance necks with flat-based PPC bullets, traditional PPC bullets. And I think this is going to conclude my experiment with the heavy bullets in the 6PPC. Because I started with a 243 Ackley, remember? Didn't get what I wanted. I went clear down to the 6BR because that's all that was available. It was just coming on the market with the hard brass and the small pockets. Got it up into the 2900-ish range. And about that time, the 6.5x47 case became available. Bam! Everything switched. It did everything I ever dreamed the 243 Ackley would do. Then the 308 Palma case came out. And I'm like, dude, you want to really smoke these bad boys out? You want to get these ramped up to 35? Well, let's not go there. But the point is, Lapua has given us some options. I love them for that. This, I think, is done, and the mechanism has been established. That's what matters.